Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ask Kati Anything. I'm your host, licensed marriage and family therapist, Kati Morton. I'm so glad that you're here. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about depersonalization, derealization, otherwise known as dissociation. I'm also going to discuss DID, or dissociative identity disorder. We'll also talk about building our sense of self and how we can do that. Then we'll dive into whether or not we can love therapy too much and why we can feel awkward after disclosing our history with self-injury. And finally, we're going to talk about whether or not we can be so damaged that no amount of therapy can help us. If you're looking to get your questions answered, I also have live streams over in my YouTube memberships at the Psyched Up 30 and Psyched Up 60 levels. It also saves you money if you're signing up to do it on a laptop, not in the app. The app charges you a fee. I've learned from people, so I just want to tell you, do it on a laptop or do it from your desktop. It'll save you the app fee. I didn't realize they were adding that, and they just made me aware. So you can join the Psyched Up 30 or Psyched Up 60 for live streams every month where I answer your questions. And also over on my Patreon page, you can go to patreon.com/Kati Morton and pick a tier that works with your budget. Without further ado, let's jump into this first question. This question says, "Hi Kati, I struggle with persistent depersonalization and derealization." Now, for anybody who doesn't know, depersonalization is when we're like removed from self. Remember, dissociation is like when our brain pulls the ripcord on reality because what's happening is just too intense. It's more than we can process. We don't really know what to do with it and with how we feel. And so it pulls us out a little bit. Now, depersonalization, again, is removal from self. Derealization is when we're kind of removed from our environment. Can feel like things are just a little hazy or like we're in a movie. Okay? So this person struggles with that. I've tried a lot of things over the years: therapy, different mindfulness practices, temperature play, full body shakes, yoga, meditation, being aware of my body, etc. And nothing is working. I know it gets worse when I'm overwhelmed or tired or hungry, yes. But it's nearly happening 24/7, even if I'm happy and relaxed and on holidays, for example. It doesn't make sense to me. Sometimes it gets really bad. I think when I also start panicking, then I feel like I can't see properly and feel so far gone. It feels so far gone that it feels scary. I know dissociation is not scary and it's my body's way of protecting me, but when it's so severe, it feels absolutely horrible. Do you have any tips for me? It started 3 years ago when I struggled badly with anorexia and my mental health really declined and I was suicidal and felt really helpless and alone. Is it possible to be traumatized from this experience? Or is it possible that I have developed complex PTSD from this and dissociate so severely now? I feel like I'm in a constant stress response and always feel so uneasy. Do you have any advice for me? Thank you so much. I love your videos and thanks for helping us. Of course. There's a lot to unpack here. Now, when we're suicidal, I talked about this, I think, last week, that when we are the threat to our own safety, we can be traumatized. If we attempted to take our own life, that could be a trauma. And I want everyone to know that that can cause us to develop PTSD. Remember, being traumatized does not always mean that we develop PTSD, right? We can be traumatized, process it, be okay. Or we can be traumatized, it's too much for our brain and body to deal with, and we develop PTSD over time. And so only you really know what you've been through. Having, suicidal thoughts, I don't know if you had any attempts, that could definitely be traumatizing, but at the very least, something happened because you struggled with anorexia and your mental health declined. I'm curious what the cause of that is, because an eating disorder is a coping skill. Something else happened to you. Something else is going on. There's a reason that we felt the need to try to control our life through our food, or we felt like everything else was so out of control. We controlled our body because that's all we can control. Either way, we wanted to numb out from what was going on, and I don't know why. So that's really my question for you is, what's the root of this? Because dissociation happens when our brain and body are so overwhelmed by what's going on that it's dangerous or too uncomfortable for us to stay present. So again, it pulls that ripcord on reality. Now, this is happening to you because clearly you're still in a constant state of stress. I don't know what the triggers necessarily are, but if you're constantly hypervigilant, if you're constantly feeling on edge, if you just don't feel good, because even you said it happens when you're even happy and relaxed, I'm just curious if that's really true or if it's when we're distracting or numbing out. My advice for you, if you're not already in therapy, is to get into therapy. I'm very curious about the root cause of your anorexia and what you think that was helping you try to numb out from or cope with. And if we can get assistance for that, that's how we're going to pull ourselves out of this dissociation. Because I want to leave you with this, I guess. The true way to manage dissociation, or to make it so it doesn't happen with such regularity, is to allow our nervous system to relax and not be pulled into our stress response. Now, that's obviously sounds very easy, but it can be very difficult, right? Especially if we have trauma in our past. And so the reason that you're still being pulled into it is because you're clearly still, either you feel in danger, you still feel overwhelmed, like whatever that causes, I feel like either we haven't processed it or it's still happening. And so in order for you to be able to not dissociate, 'cause it sounds like you don't like it, you're like, I hate it and it's happening all the time, and like it feels horrible, right? We either need to process through what happened and figure out what that process through the reason our anorexia exists or existed, or we need to get out of the stressful situation or abusive situation that we're currently in. Because I don't know if it's current or it's past, but either way, we don't feel calm enough. That's why we continue to dissociate. It's your body's and your brain's knee-jerk reaction. If you feel like it's happening for no reason at all, that kind of tells me that this is based on something that did happen, but isn't currently happening, but we haven't been able to work through it enough so we still feel on edge about it. Like we feel all the symptoms of our PTSD, like the hypervigilance and avoiding situations that remind us of it and all of that. And the best way to move through that is through therapy. And therapy can look like a lot of different things, right? It can be talk therapy, it can be EMDR, it could be parts work or schema therapy, internal family systems. There's a lot of different types of therapy. So if you're trying one and you're like, I still feel terrible and I'm still dissociating all the time, it's okay to try something different, to find someone else. But that's because otherwise, like, you're doing all the things that can help, like all the tools in the moment. But if that root reason isn't being treated, or if that, where our unease is coming from, those triggers aren't being managed, that's why those things aren't helping, right? No amount of yoga, body shakes, meditation is going to take away that response. So I would try to figure out what caused your anorexia. What were we numbing out from? Because in there is your answer and what we need to kind of work through and process in therapy so that we can live a life without this type of hypervigilance and feeling overwhelmed, essentially this stress that's causing us to dissociate all the time. Now, there was an add-on to this that says, Kati, I've been in counseling for years and never realized until recently how dissociated most of my life has been. I started to feel things more intensely physically about a year ago, noticing the temperature change from carpet to tile floors and the smoothness of a baby's skin and the need to shave my legs. Things I have never noticed became huge to my senses. Just last week, I realized I've been emotionally not feeling as well. I thought I was feeling my emotions because I could talk about things and tell my counselor what I felt and why I think I felt this way. But then the other day, I actually felt it, like a sensation in my body. Yay. I know it's not comfortable, but yay for the progress. I felt my emotions. I literally crumbled to the ground and immediately tried to distract myself from feeling. It was quite an overwhelming experience. And for the first time, I felt like I understood why feelings are called feelings. I hope this makes sense. Totally, because you felt it. You actually had the sensations. But since that moment, I have not felt like that again. I was angry at someone who had hurt me years and years ago, and the tightness in my chest and throat. Anyways, my question is, how do I work on getting more emotional feelings back? It's like I've been numb since that moment. How do I ease into it so it's not so overwhelming? Is it possible to have been so out of touch that I'd never felt before that I can remember in my 42 years? I didn't know what I was missing, and I'm questioning what else I am still missing. The best advice I have, first of all, it's not crazy to think that you've never felt an emotion before, even though you're 42 years old, because most of us either weren't taught about it or it didn't feel safe to do it. Or felt we did it and it was so uncomfortable and so overwhelming. We're like, well, and we just shut it off. So know that it's very normal to be like, I don't think I've ever experienced it. That's not wild to think. That's not crazy to think. And it is very possible. But the best way for us to figure out how to do this more is to consider that day when you experienced it for the first time. I know it was overwhelming. I know you crumbled to the floor, but what was it that led up to that moment? What gave you the opportunity or the permission or allowed you to even consider being vulnerable like that? Like, what led up to that moment? We have to think about that because there's something in there, something you were doing in therapy, some maybe aha moment you had, some maybe safety or neutrality we felt in our space allowed us to let that through. Now, I know it was overwhelming, but I want you to try to figure out how you did that, because there's a ton of ways we can go about it, and I could try to tell you how to do it again, but everyone's different. I really can't tell you how to do it. Only you know what allowed for that space for you to experience it. I hope that makes sense. So that's really the answer. And your part of your question where you ask, is there any way to do it so that it's not overwhelming? The best thing I can tell you is that as you continue to do it, it will get less and less and less overwhelming. It's almost like, when a pot is like steaming on the stove, right? It's like our water pot, like that's filled with boiling water, our teapot. As we pour some of that hot water out, it will stop sounding the alarm, and it won't be bubbling to the top, right? We're letting it out little by little. Does that mean that the hot water is not hot and it won't burn us? No, it might still be overwhelming, but as we do it, it'll get less and less and less so. Is that a good analogy? Maybe, maybe not. But we have to let some of it out little by little, and then it won't be so overwhelming. I would even hypothesize that it might have felt overwhelming to you in the moment because you have no experience with this. And that sensation, even if, it's a normal emotional sensation, was super foreign. We didn't know what to do with it, and it felt intense because we've never felt anything like that before. So give yourself a little compassion as you navigate this. And when we try to figure out how to do it again, make sure you do it in a place that feels safe to you so that if you fall apart, you can. And know that that's okay. We don't have to stuff it down right away. Can we explore it? Can we allow ourselves to feel it? Even if we, fall to our knees and crumble, that's okay. It's okay to fall apart. We don't have to keep it all together all the time. I give you full permission to fall apart. I fall apart from time to time when I'm having a strong emotional reaction to something. It's okay. I mean, I was just on a plane, you guys, watching that new film. It's called If. It's for imaginary friends. And I was crying. And I know the lady next to me could see me crying, but I was like, you know what? This is a real good film. And if you haven't watched it, you should watch it. It's not ideal, but I survived, and it's okay. It's okay to show emotions. It's okay to fall apart. It's part of being a human. Okay. I know that that's not the best answer, or maybe the answer you're hoping for, but it's the truth. So figure out how you could do it, and let's do it more often, okay? Someone else has an add-on, and they said, I struggle with constant depersonalization and derealization as well, and I have no memory of anything. I remember that I did something, but I don't remember any details about it. But I feel like this about all my life, childhood, teenage years, and recent years. It's just like I don't have much memory at all. Is that because of dissociation? Yes, we'll talk about this. Is it possible that I'll have this for the rest of my life because I feel like I've tried so many things and nothing is working? It gives me constant brain fog and concentration problems in my daily life, and studying is so difficult because of it. Any advice? Thank you so much. When we dissociate, what happens is called a dissociative fugue. And that fugue is essentially memory loss. It's a lapse in memory, and it's a part of it. You can have a dissociative fugue. I don't know why that was hard to say, on its own, or you can have it as part of your as like your DPDR is happening, your depersonalization, derealisation. It's under the DSM symptoms. It's in there as well. And so because our brain is pulling us out of body, out of environment, we're so removed that we can not form full memories because we're not technically present, or we can form like fragmented memories where they're, it's like little blips, like feels like we're flipping through a photo book, or somebody's like jumping between different flashes of images, right? We can have those fragmented memories, or we can have repressed memories where it feels like we don't have it, but then as we do our work in therapy, it will come up and we're like, oh my God, I remember, right? Those three types of like memory issues, right? Like no memory at all, fragmented, or repressed, can happen when we're dissociated. It's incredibly common. Those are all part of that fugue state. And so it is all because of your dissociation. It sounds like we're feeling very overwhelmed. I don't know if you have worked on this in therapy, but that's going to be your best way out. Just like I talked about before, that we can do the body shakes, we can do the dunking our face in cold water, we can do meditation and yoga, we can do all the things to try to ground us. But if we still feel completely dysregulated, completely overwhelmed, and it's hard for us to stay present at all, we're going to need to see a therapist so we can let some of that out. We can take some of that edge off so we're not just pushed into that stress response all the time, right? So quickly triggered, and our brain pulls the ripcord like so fast, right? We're going to have to get ourselves to a place, not necessarily where we feel safe. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, but just where we don't feel as triggered or as dysregulated. We're going to have to work in therapy to figure out what triggered this. When did this start? You said it feels like your whole childhood and teenage years. There probably are some repressed memories or something that happened. Maybe we already kind of know, but at the very least, we're going to have to find some tools and techniques to help you calm your nervous system down, because it's on high alert. And that's why dissociation is happening so frequently. Okay. Final add-on says, can you explain derealization and depersonalization? I already did, so I just wanted to mention, I should have said that earlier. And would doom scrolling or other ways of numbing out count as one of these? No. Doom scrolling, if anybody isn't familiar with that term, it's essentially when we just scroll on social media and read things that are stressful or painful or maybe triggering, and we just keep doing it, or numbing out through any other action. That is not the same as depersonalization, derealization. Those are when we feel removed from self or removed from environment. Maybe they can happen at the same time for sure, but those are not the same thing. It's when we, feel foggy and we almost feel like we're watching ourselves do things, and we kind of come out of it sometimes, and we're like, oh, and you might not remember. Everybody's been talking about memory. We will have a lack of memory of that time. Also, it's important to note that when we are depersonalized or derealized, so we're dissociated, we are unable to process trauma in that state. So make sure, if you're doing the work in therapy, that you are actually present. Moving on to question number 2. Moving on to question number 2. This question says, hi, Kati, happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. It says, I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and have complex PTSD. I don't think I have DID, remember, dissociative identity disorder. However, why do I have different voices that come out at different times in ways that I cannot control? My friends say I have 2 different voices. One is higher pitched and small, and the other is deeper and more grown up. Some things for sure can trigger it, like feeling afraid or ashamed, but it doesn't always trigger it. Sometimes I'm just that particular voice for a day or an hour. It sounds pretty much the same to me, and I cannot change it at all. What is this about? Is it just normal for most people, and can I fix it? This is an interesting question, because to me, this sounds like DID. Now, I obviously not my patient, and I have a ton of follow-up questions, but the fact that you feel like there are 2 different parts of yourself, I guess my question is, it sounds like you remember it. I'm wondering if these are different parts of yourself, and if the little one, because it sounds like there's a high-pitched small one, and I don't know if feeling afraid or ashamed, does that trigger the deeper, more grown-up one? I have some questions about it, but it clearly is as a result or coming out of the fact that you were abused and traumatized and you have complex PTSD. Because DID used to be called multiple personality disorder for this very reason, because people feel like they have different versions of themselves that show up. Now, people who have a very, I don't even want to say intense, but it's all on a spectrum, right? I believe dissociation happens on a spectrum. But when it comes to DID, I've had patients who have, what I would say more control over their switches between their alters. I have others who've had zero control. I have people who feel they don't have any memory of what their alters have done. Others who do. I feel like it's really varied. And your situation to me does sound like it's in that DID space, because it's triggered. It happens, and you feel like sometimes it's just it happens without you knowing why. And it happens without you even participating. It just happens. And your friends have noticed. So the more I even think about this, and the more we talk about it, the more I believe that this is DID related. And it's definitely as a result of your trauma. And the reason that people with multiple personality disorder develop these different personalities or these different alters is most of the time, I'd probably say like 99% of the time, trauma related. And we have these we kind of break ourselves into pieces as a way of protecting ourselves from the trauma that's happening. What I mean by that is when we have DID, we create a persona, let's say, that's like tougher, the one that comes out and like beats the shit out of someone who's trying to hurt us. They're protective. Then we have a version of ourselves that's like little, like child us, maybe the one that sustained the abuse. This is kind of the more vulnerable, could even be more manipulative version of us to like get our needs met, right? It all serves a purpose to keep our whole alive and well. And there could be all sorts of different versions, right? The limit is, I forget what the average is. I read an article, this is like years ago now, but I don't know. I've had people have like 14 alters, people have 4, 2. It just depends on you. But that's all with the goal of protecting you from the abuse that's happening, protecting you from the like fallout from the abuse, and allowing you to kind of separate it and protect yourself, get your needs met, or whatever it may be. And so that's really why this happens. And because you do have abuse in your past and you're having these like 2 different voices and 2 different kind of versions of you that show up, maybe that could be, your version of that. So I would talk to your therapist. If you're not seeing someone, I would definitely get in to see someone, but talk to them about this and figure it out, because the goal of working with someone with DID is not to like get rid of the other voices or get rid of, any of the alters. It's more to find a way for them to work better together. It's like seamlessly work together so that it's not so jarring to our life. It doesn't negatively affect us or our relationships. And it helps us still feel okay in ourselves, safe and okay. Like we're able to get our needs met. We're able to protect ourselves. And trying to figure that out is really the goal. Okay. I hope that helps. And I hope that makes sense. Moving on to question number 3. This question says, Kati, how can I build a sense of self when no sense or only a weak sense of self has ever existed? In this scenario, there's no rebuilding of the self because it never existed as a whole in the past. There's nothing to be rebuilt because it hasn't been built yet. Is there any relevant research that looks at outcomes for individuals who developed a sense of self for the very first time in adulthood or well into adulthood? I know that a lot of people were traumatized from birth onward in ways that seemingly impaired the brain's ability to form a cohesive sense of self, but I only ever really see advice on rebuilding or rediscovering one's sense of self, a self that existed in the past. Since so few seem to ever address the scenario of building a genuine sense of self in adulthood, when the sense of self never formed during developmental years, it could be a good topic for discussion. I agree. And I've talked about this off and on, but I'm not sure which language I used, and maybe I talked about it as rebuilding. But when it comes to figuring out who we are, how do we form our sense of self, I truly believe we have to be curious, not judgmental, right? We need to try to see what we like and don't like. I encourage the curiosity. I encourage the adventure. When we automatically want to say like, I don't think I want to do that. I challenge you. Have you done it before? Should we try it again? We have to get to know ourselves. Take yourself on dates. Take yourself to do different things that you maybe never done before. Take that cooking class. Learn how to play guitar. Try to go on a hike. Maybe try paddleboarding or kayaking, and all depending on your physical abilities. But take that time to get to know yourself. Don't jump to conclusions. Try things out first. I also find a great way to build a sense of self from scratch is journaling. What comes to mind for you? What do you think about this? Like, know that it can be free flowing. It doesn't have to be spelled correctly. It doesn't have to be like telling a story. It can be like bullet points. It doesn't even have to make any sense. I just want you to start getting that out. Start, seeing what your thoughts are for the day. What are things that you're hoping for? I do offer journal prompts if you struggle to get started. I offer journal prompts through my YouTube memberships. It's $5 a month. I send one out on Tuesday and one on Friday. So that could help you get started. There's also books you can get to help with prompts, or I'm sure you can look some up online. Those are all good ways to try to figure out who you are, to gain that sense of self. And when you try things and you decide you don't like it, I want you to write about why you didn't like it or why you did like it. Let's just be curious. Pretend you're dating yourself. You're trying to figure out who you are. What do they like to do? Where are they from? What are they, what are their goals? Those are all things we can explore. And I would argue that almost every one of us is constantly building, tearing down, and rebuilding our sense of self. We're never finished. And it's something that we're all, I feel like we're all in progress constantly, right? Like under construction. And there's nothing wrong with you, building it right now and starting to figure it out. It's never too late. And we can always learn something new about ourselves for those of you who feel like you need to rebuild. But overall, I really feel like we have to spend time with ourselves. We have to be okay in the quiet. We have to be okay journaling about things and unsure of where it's going or what we're doing. I used to do morning pages with Through the Artist's Way. And it was like for a half an hour, you just wrote as much as you could. Maybe try that first thing in the morning before your brain can get in the way too much and see what comes up. Okay? Remember, be curious, not judgmental. Moving on to question number 4. This question says, "Hi, Kati, I hope you're well." I am. I hope you're well. I love therapy. I know it's supposed to be difficult and a lot of people are scared to work on themselves in therapy, but I absolutely love it. My therapist told me that I'm very analytical and symptom focused. I constantly analyze every small behavior about myself and I can't seem to stop. I constantly need to make sense of everything. Sounds like we might be a little intellectualizing. That's what I am. I'm trying to make sense of everything, a little logical. I also love the attention that she gives me and I love that she cares about me. I wish I could see her all day, every day. Is it normal to love therapy this much? I feel like it's my favorite thing that I've ever done in all my life, and I'd much rather have therapy with her than travel the world, for example, or do other enjoyable things. Is this weird? Ha ha ha. Okay. There's an add-on, but let's just jump right in. Loving therapy is not a bad thing, but loving it this much, so much so that we don't want to do anything else, is not a healthy attachment to it. Meaning that healthy attachment is like, I look forward to therapy. I enjoy it. I find it super beneficial. I like to look into it. And I enjoy learning about myself and my behaviors. But when I'm not there, I'm living my life. Right? Therapy is not life. Therapy is as a place where we can like dump about our life, talk about the things that we're going through and get some constructive feedback and ideas for ways that we can move towards our goals. Therapy is not the same as life. And I think wanting to be in it all the time tells me that it's possible that we have an unhealthy attachment to our therapist or even just to therapy as a whole. And this could come out of the fact that maybe people in our life growing up didn't show us attention or really care about us or show us that they cared. They weren't affirming. They didn't, say anything about how good it was to see us or how much they love us. We didn't get that. Or maybe we had inconsistent parents where they were there and then not, or nice and then abusive. And that inconsistency can cause this. Also, it could be, neglect. Like our parents were there, like emotional neglect. We had a house and we had food, but like didn't really support me the way I needed. They didn't hold me when I cried or told me that it'd be okay, even if that bully was really rude at school or something like that. That's where I think this comes from. It's okay to enjoy therapy, but it shouldn't be something that we want to do all day, every day. And is especially not something we should want to do instead of living our life and like traveling or enjoying other things. Therapy is like a piece of our life to help us make the rest of our life better. Therapy is not our life. Okay? Now, a comment on this says, can being like this be or become a problem? Yes. Like the person who asked this question, I love going to therapy despite the anxiety, and I'm always very good at the cognitive parts, like using the ABC technique to challenge and change my disordered thoughts. However, my therapist told me a few times now to slow down and to not be so quick on finding solutions. What does this mean and how can it harm? Now, just like I said, therapy is only a piece of our life. It's not our life. So being so dependent on it and wanting to be in it all the time is not healthy. Because therapy exists so we can make the rest of our life better, okay? Now, the fact that your therapist tells you to slow down and not be so quick at finding solutions, it might be the style of therapist. I would be that way as well. It would tell me potentially that you're having a hard time sitting in the discomfort or sitting in the unknown. You like to fix things. It's hard for you to acknowledge them and talk about them. And so your therapist is probably mentioning this because they want you to be able to sit in it for a beat, acknowledge what's going on, identify how you feel versus jumping to the fix. Because while solutions are helpful and they're an important part of therapy, really, we can't skip past all of the work and jump to the solution, because then the solution won't actually really fix something. We're kind of just ignoring the real process. So it'll come up in another way. It's almost like if we try to ignore, or we tried to jump from our eating disorder like all over the work, and we're like, okay, well, it means I need to get into treatment. Okay. And you see a dietitian and you do this thing. And I'm like, whoa. Let's figure out where this comes from and why this coping skill exists, right? We can't just jump right into the solution. I mean, yes, it's helpful and it's part of it, but we're still going to have to go through the like discovery piece. And even when you jump to that solution, actually doing the solution is going to take some work too. And your therapist might feel like you're rushing yourself. If you don't agree and you think that this is very helpful and it's how you want to move forward, let your therapist know that. It's okay to challenge them and to be like, hey, but I kind of like this. I work best with solutions and then working backwards. Speak up about it, because if that's what is going to work best for you, that's fine. I just want to make sure you're not skipping over the discomfort or the emotional parts because you just don't want to be in them, right? Therapy is a place to be challenged, and I want to challenge you to take your time in that discovery place, okay? Okay, moving on to question number 5. It says, hi, Kati. I just recently told a friend about my self-harming, and now I feel really awkward. I wanted to know, why do I feel so embarrassed when near this friend now? Because you let them in on your secret, right? Self-injury, eating disorders, even depression and anxiety or any mental illness can sometimes like thrive in the secret. And it can feel like it's our special little thing. And it's also a part of ourselves that we kind of keep hidden because we might have some shame, blame, guilt, or embarrassment wrapped up with it. Now we've let somebody in on like our inner self. It could feel like the icky parts of ourself, or it might just feel like we let them in on our secret. And that can feel really vulnerable. That can feel really invasive, and we can feel exposed. And I believe what you're experiencing is what I would call a vulnerability hangover, where we expressed ourselves, we put ourselves out there, and we hate it, right? Super uncomfortable. Now I'm out there. Now they know. Oh, what am I going to do? And I encourage you to journal about this and to challenge yourself to spend time with them and to kind of push through, because it's okay to share parts of ourselves, especially if they I don't know if they did, but it sounds like they're still your friend and they're still around. So I assume they responded kindly to you sharing that. So we prove to ourselves that talking about it isn't terrible, isn't terrifying, and it'll be okay, right? So to kind of check our facts on that. But more than that, I really think it's kind of like journaling about what's coming up for you and why you feel so embarrassed. Why did you decide to share it in the first place? Do we have facts to support that this friend's okay and that we let them in and it's safe and we're actually okay with it? This is probably a new experience for you. So be patient with yourself as you get used to this. But that vulnerability hangover, I have felt it before. A lot of people in our community have felt them before. We just have to give ourselves a little time to get used to it and to move through it. But I encourage you to keep engaging with that friend, keep sharing and talking in a way that feels authentic to you. And trust me when I tell you that feeling will go away, because we'll slowly prove to our nervous system that she's not a threat or he's not a threat, that they can be supportive of us, that it's okay to share this about who we are and what we're going through. But it just takes some time. It's new, right? So be patient with yourself, okay? Final question number 6 says, hi, Kati, I hope you're doing well. I am. I hope you're doing well. I hope this makes sense to you. It's something I've been wondering about. Is it possible to be so severely damaged by your past that no matter how much therapy you got, that you never really heal? Because after all the therapy I've got, I still have so many trigger points. Is it because I've been traumatized over and over? Is it because of all sorts of abuse over and over? Am I not supposed to be over it by now? I mean, so much time has passed and the pain is so real, like it happened yesterday, and sometimes I still have nightmares. I am better in some ways, but there's a part of me that I feel will never heal. I will stay broken, even though you move on and go on with your life, but a part of me still feels stuck. I love your podcast. It helps me in many ways. Of course, I'm so glad that you love it. These are great questions. Now, I do not believe any of us are so severely damaged that we can't get better, but I do believe that some of us need different types of therapy than we've received. Now, hear me out. Talk therapy as a whole is usually what we're going to encounter when we reach out to a therapist. Talk therapy essentially means you talk to me, I talk back to you, I give you some homework maybe or some behaviors to do, and that's how we do it. That's how we work through it. I could be doing cognitive behavioral therapy, I could be doing dialectical behavior therapy, or any kind like that. Those are styles of therapy, but they're based on the talk therapy model. We talk to each other. That's most of therapy. Talk therapy only works for about 40% of people. That leaves 60% of us feeling like, well, it was kind of helpful, but I still don't feel my best, right? I still feel kind of, ugh. We might need something different. We might need something like EMDR, somatic experiencing. We might need a different modality, internal family system, schema therapy, parts work. Those could all be different pieces, and parts work can be part of internal family systems. If any of you are like, wait, aren't they connected? They are. But we might need a different style of therapy to get us through to what I would call like the most resolution of our symptoms, into kind of remission, if we want to talk about it like that. Having one type of therapy isn't always enough for actually a majority of us. So no, you are not too broken. No, you are not too damaged to get better. We just need to get more creative with the treatments that we reach out to and the things that we try, because we need different types to help us work through it, especially trauma, because so much of it is stored in our cells and in our body. And that's why somatic experiencing can be so helpful. There's also tons of research being had currently about the uses of psilocybin, ketamine. I think there's even some on like peyote and other different types of, MDMA, that's another one, but different types of what we used to think of as only street drugs or drugs, like bad, ick, but they can be incredibly beneficial when it comes to healing. So as those research studies continue and as things still improve and as, you're working on yourself, I encourage you to try something different, because we might just need that like alternative treatment to get us to the finish line, to get us to a place where our symptoms, yeah, they might come up when we're really run down and we feel overwhelmed, but overall, they're not affecting us day in or day out. We feel like we're pretty much, in remission from our PTSD symptoms. I truly believe with all of my heart that we are all able to get better. We all can heal. We all can, not be dealing with our symptoms of our mental illness day in and day out. We can get into remission or be recovered, or whatever word you want to use. So stick with it, maybe reach out and try a different type of therapy, and let's see if that can help you feel better, because there's no reason for you to keep feeling like this. We just haven't gotten you the right care. It's almost like going to see the doctor and they give you this one antibiotic, but you still are struggling with the sickness. We need something different, right? Nothing wrong with that. It might even be medication based too. Maybe we need to see a psychiatrist and try a different type of medication as well in conjunction with our therapy. Okay? Thank you all so much for listening and watching. Thank you for sharing this podcast. Thank you for leaving your comments and your questions. Everything helps. I appreciate you all so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Do your homework, and I'll see you next time.